teams, the journey they had to take. Not as difficult of a path as some of our other games, only going 4 games in total in these best of 5s.
And if there's one thing I learned, is that you can disregard the scores for the most part of the previous rounds. And I learned that from the Novi experience, how they had not dropped a single game, not even a game. We're not talking series. Didn't drop a game all season long, ended up losing in the finals. So, you know, it's a long journey for both of these teams, but they can just now focus purely on this matchup.
And taking a look at the head-to-head really quick, you see Brooklyn Technical versus Huntington Beach. We got New York and California represented here. Both of these teams are their Eastern Youth Champion for Overwatch 2 in Brooklyn, and then the Pacific, excuse me, not Western.
Well, it is Western.
Western Pacific, yeah, but it's Pacific, James.
It is Pacific, but that is over on the west. On the west side.
You have to be more specific. That's okay, though. We're about to get ready and into this game, James, and I know that we have a lot of fun discussing this, but I just want to know your prediction so we could throw it to the real knowledgeable casters over on the other side.
Oh, gosh. This is a tough one. Who do you have, Jordy?
You know what? Give me Huntington Beach. I'm chilling. I've got my sunglasses on. I've got my sunscreen on. I'm feeling the sun. I'm feeling the heat. I got Huntington Beach.
You know, I'm actually going to throw a curveball on you. I'm going to go Huntington Beach as well.
Whoa!
This is the one time that we are going to go on the same team.
That's crazy.
I figure it's the last series. We might as well do it.
Yeah, well, look at that. Huntington Beach.
All right.
How about that? We may have cast or cursed it. I don't know, but you can also vote at home on the Twitch chat poll. On YouTube, I don't know if we have a poll there. Sorry. But Twitch chat, you can hit that poll button. But while you're hitting those votes, let's go ahead and throw it over to our casters, and let's get started with Overwatch 2.
Much appreciated. And yeah, we're getting ready to get things kicked off. I think we're kind of disregarding a team that goes by the name of Mogwarts, though, because let's be very real with ourselves. I think they've won the name game.
Yeah, by name alone, they've got to be the clear front runners, at least in my opinion. Certainly, I think now our opinion collectively, that's probably where we're looking. So maybe
actually just the right opinion. Maybe the desk isn't. Maybe the desk is just wrong.
It's casters versus desk at this point, but it's also East versus West. I think that's also a cool little dynamic that we got playing out here. We've got the Pacific Youth Champion going up against the Eastern Youth Champion in this matchup, and two teams that have been dominant through the bracket as well. Really looking forward to this one, man.
Yeah, they've had very similar seasons. I know some of the other games haven't had like the closest finals. This smells like it could be that. I don't want to jinx it, but really it has the makings of a good game. And with, I think, where the meta sits in Overwatch, it's really primed for a good game. There's a lot of openness with what these teams can play, what they can bring to the table, how they can try to counter one another with strategies. It's not really going to be like these two teams running the exact same thing for a lot of these maps. Yes, they may mirror. There's a good chance we get at least a little bit of experimentation between these two to try and really throw wrenches into one another's plans. And for me, that's what makes this really exciting, what makes it a really volatile match.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things about, you know, this time period right now, the era that we're in with Overwatch 2, is that, you know, you look back at the OWCS Dallas Major that just went on very recently, and I mean, that was a very dynamic event. You saw a lot of different stuff being thrown out, a lot of different, you know, top-level teams trying a whole bunch of different strategies, and not just, you know, one strategy where you see a couple of different, like, you know, heroes intermixed here and there, but it's realistically still the same play style. It's different play styles even, which is not something that happens all too often. As well, we've seen a couple of patches since the patch that we saw in OWCS Dallas Major, so I'm curious to see how these teams have kind of developed their strategies, because it's not just the same, you know, patch they started the entire bracket on, but there's also been some new stuff as well since then.
Yeah, and that's always what's exciting about youth esports in particular, is kind of how they approach it, right? Because you get this trickle down of meta from pros to second leagues to collegiate to high school and youth programs, but realistically, a lot of these teams, especially at the top level of youth programs, have had enough time to adapt to these metas. The players are at a level, at a caliber where they are really able to, and the changes that they bring in don't just represent the meta, but also what capabilities these individuals bring to the field as well. So we're going to see some pretty unique stuff, I'd hope.
Yeah, looking straight up, I mean, already, I would say Brooklyn Technical is the team that I would say has the composition that I would expect more in this scenario here, but definitely still some brawl potential on the side of Huntington Beach as well. Going to see how they wind up standing off against each other. Toxic Void already down low and taken down already.
Yeah, positionally, this is kind of the dream for Brooklyn Technical, right? Just take this choke, use it to avoid a lot of that poke that's coming out from the Sigma, coming out from the Baptiste, who's now down. It's a slow but sure push, one that Brooklyn Technical will pick up a win on.
They're going to go ahead and try to collect this point along with it, but Huntington Beach battling back just a little bit, but it's not going to be enough. Brooklyn Technical, the Mogwarts, also featuring, I think, my favorite, not just team name, but also my favorite player name with Love My Mom 456. I mean, genuinely a top-notch name as well. It can't go unnoticed. It has to be brought up.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering, like, the age of these players. Youth programs is usually, like, you know, trying to be rebellious. I Love My Mom, arguably a less common title at this age.
I think, ironically, sort of a little bit more so, though, right? Because everybody else is doing the other thing.
Exactly. All right, second engagement coming around. No ultimates are up yet, so this one's not any more special than the last. That being said, the result does look relatively similar. Quick picks off onto the back line means a quick win.
To see, though, Brooklyn Technical, they've done this quite often. It feels like they really want to give into that brawl, and it does seem like they are able to kind of battle things out over time through attrition, something that this composition is going to enable them to do now that they've made that swap. They've gone from Sigma. They've now moving over to what is effectively, I mean, much closer to the mirror match that, you know, I think over time we will probably expect to see more of with this Ramattra in play here, something that we also saw at the pro level very recently as well.
Big advantage here for Brooklyn Technical with them having the sound barrier online very early. They're going to pop it and try to find an engagement onto the back line of Huntington Beach, and they're able to. CKC down, EV Dog down. A swift win off of an ultimate advantage garnered largely in all the damage that they were taking between those two fights. See, Atlas still doesn't have the sound barrier up to match.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be something I think that Huntington Beach probably wants to try to be able to see if they can play this next fight a little bit more slowly, try to buy some time where David Newman's likely to pull out the ultimate there early on. If Huntington Beach can disengage long enough so that they can get that sound barrier online, that's going to be a win condition for them, and they need it now. It's 90% for Brooklyn Technical.
Oh, but boy, crossing this line onto the point's going to cost them a lot in terms of health bar. Not to mention the fact that, like you said, the Annihilation's online, and it immediately spaces the back line away. The sound barrier comes up, but it's only onto two. Only CKC and Atlas caught it. The entire back line left stranded amidst the wrath of David Newman, who's going to take the rest of this point for Brooklyn Technical.
Say pretty clinical for Brooklyn Technical here. I mean, they lost that first engagement. They made a swap. Took them a little bit of time, but now we can see them going over to that next point, and they have some momentum to build off of, right? That sound barrier that got used late there by Atlas, only catching two, also now having to be behind in Monster by 40% again here. I mean, this pacing differential could wind up being something that hurts them for the rest of the match if they can't find a way to catch up.
Yeah, you've got to find a way to turn this around. I think capitalizing on this fight is the big one. They have a slight ultimate advantage. If they can convert on this, they might be able to stabilize it, but so far not going well. A clever placement of the amplification matrix buys an early fight win for Brooklyn Technical, and now it looks like it's going to go from bad to worse in terms of ultimates.
Yeah, I mean, 3 clean team fights in a row for Brooklyn Technical here. Huntington Beach struggling to find that same kind of confidence that they had opening some of these engagements up with, getting those early eliminations, and yet still, I mean, the longer kind of drawn-out brawling style that we see from Brooklyn Technical, yes, it's still solid, but they've been winning these fights, getting those opening picks, and that's been something that I think Huntington Beach needs to look out for, and without some of these support ults, it's going to make it even harder.
And now the question's like, where's the engagement? How do you actually walk at Brooklyn Technical right now? Because even if you get in, you get dead-eyed out, pulse bombs there to ward you off, you have an amplification matrix to maybe solidify your position up on the high ground a little bit more. It does take down David Newman, and now they've really managed to convert. David Newman just, I think, caught out, overextended there early on in the fight, didn't play respecting that amp matrix, and that's going to be a loss for Brooklyn Technical.
Still some of those drawn-out engagements, but this is still, I would say, very much a major boon in Huntington Beach's favor. They won the fight quite some time ago. They're now at 20%.
It's efficient.
Yes, exactly. It was also very efficient, but on top of that, look, we're also kind of catching up. We'd already kind of have highlighted the sound barrier and the pacing there. Atlas is now at 80%. They did just come off of a one-team fight. Brooklyn Technical doesn't have anything really guaranteed fight winning, so there might be opportunity here for Huntington Beach to actually equalize in some of this ult economy, and that would be huge for them moving forward.
Brooklyn Technical now gets to feel what it's like to be on the reverse side of that sound barrier coin. All it's going to take is the bit of clever timing from Atlas. Last one we saw used only caught 2 members, didn't quite get them what they needed. Now they're going to step forward with the help of a Deadeye. They're able to pick up 1 off the back of it, and the tank's going to be enough. Huntington Beach are down and likely out. Sound barrier absolutely will not buy you back into this fight.
I still like this from Huntington Beach. Yes, they wind up getting some, early fallouts there, and I mean it's definitely something that you would like to have won every fight consecutively, obviously. But here's the thing: they're coming back into this next fight. They have every weapon in their arsenal that they could possibly ask for. Atlas has the sound barrier. They do have a chance here to equalize, go 1-1, and send this to a 3rd point.
My only worry is that you have to look past just these points, right? Like if you spend big on this one, how much do you have for the next? Maybe saving does have some merit here. Pulse bomb pulls the sound barrier early. A huge play by Keone forces the ultimate out from Atlas, and now that advantage that we talked about for Huntington Beach has been cut down at the knees. Brooklyn Technical fall back onto the point and now just have to try and play their space. They're able to. Huntington Beach forced into the choke point, forced to step forward where they don't want to go. An attempt at fighting back comes out from CKC, but it's going to take a miracle. EVDog getting some work done in the back line to help our CKC chops ever lower, and it's Brooklyn Technical coming out on top. Keone with a huge play to finish off that point.
Yeah, that was massive. You would have almost anticipated Huntington Beach to go ahead and use that ultimate and then immediately try to pivot, go on the attack, and try to go ahead and find some early eliminations. They had EVDog just kind of waiting to go ahead and pop out that overclock as well, caught a couple of people, but unfortunately just a little bit slower on the uptake than I think they would have really liked to have had there in that moment. Now Brooklyn Technical 2 points up, and now also in a pretty solid position, holding out here 6 seconds before Flashpoint unlocks.
Yeah, they have less check marks at the top of their screen, but they're about 10% off of that sound barrier. They're about 20% off from the Annihilation being up. So if this goes along, they will be able to buy their way into it, and with the help of a sound barrier that we just see come out from End Monster. Now it's all the focus put onto the Annihilation of CKC. They counter with one of their own. It's effectively a 1 ult fight for them, plus 1 ult rather, in order to pick up a win. And I think that's pretty cheap, all things considered. This ultimate economy continues to be their boon.
Yeah, I love the safe play here from Brooklyn Technical too as well. I mean, you saw that sound barrier come up. They're not overly aggressive after we see them pull that out, and they know that they're going to be playing into the Annihilation, so they have to play that corner, just checking their sight lines, playing the short sight lines as well, so that they have that place to fall back to, that just kind of point of recession. Really, really solid stuff from Brooklyn Technical so far. I mean, that's the exact kind of stuff that allows them to get this lead early on in this series, and this is going to kind of set the tone, I think, for the rest of it.
That being said, ult economy is dead even here. It's elbow grease and a couple of pulse bombs for either of these teams. Keone got something done last time to see if Andrew can equalize. Tanks step in for the initial engagement. Pulse bomb out for one side. Andrew yet to retort. Emo's out and sustain, burning down at CKC to fall first. No pulse bomb out of Andrew. Huntington Beach will just call this one quits.
Yeah, they've got to back out. They've got to go ahead and get back together again. There's just not that much time here left on the clock. 90%. They're still having a couple of staggers going out, and even now, Andrew, the one thing that would have allowed them to get that overtime tick, which he did succeed at, I mean, how else are you going to be able to extend this fight? You don't have ultimates really as well, and now you certainly don't have a touch, and just like that, Mogwarts get the early lead.
An impressive display of control as well over the ult economy. They had the thing by the neck pretty much the entire time, and it was, yes, I think slightly better, slightly more efficient usage, but when it came down to mechanics, I thought both teams felt strong, felt like they were stepping in with a lot of the right ideas. Brooklyn Technical, though, were so measured in how they spent and where they spent their ultimates that it really does make you feel like they have a stranglehold over the entire map. It makes it look like the gap is maybe larger than it is, but realistically, with a couple of small changes here, I think Huntington Beach still are in this thing.
Yeah, I absolutely have to agree. I mean, these two teams were champions of their respective regions for a reason, right? And we saw the play, especially at the individual level. We saw even EVDog come out, had a couple of those really good plays, especially with the overclock in play as well. But that's the thing, starting out, getting that those early map jitters, and you're in a final right now. Hey, look, there's still opportunity here to turn things back around. I'm going to go ahead and say that Huntington Beach, definitely not counted out. We've seen how many times, Dora, in our history have we seen teams bounce back from what looked like a pretty deflating start. I don't imagine that to be the case here for Huntington Beach, and I certainly hope that they can turn it around.
No, and I feel like you can kind of tell the difference between a game that's lost and a game that's... When you're just getting gapped mechanically, when they're out aiming you, it's like, it's hard to just get better at aiming over a short period of time. It's hard to just like tell yourself that, okay, I'll just play some Kovacs in between maps and like come back and we'll be okay. But like when it's something as macro as ult economy, where you can just put more focus on it, where you can change your decision making, those are the kind of things you can make in between maps happen. And I think it's a very obvious change for Huntington Beach. That being said, there were like very few actual major mistakes. Maybe the sound barrier onto 2, and I don't want to like just like harp on the Lucio player.
Yeah,
like that's just a tough sound barrier to hit most of the time. Like, but outside of that, the mechanics felt even. A lot of those elbow grease fights at the beginning of the map where you don't have ultimates, those were going both ways. They were getting messy, and I expect that to continue.
Yeah, I think this is one of those situations where, you know, even from our perspective, where both of us have even, you know, at sometimes played and been in this position, you know, playing in some of these high stakes games. And, you know, at some points, this kind of matchup where it feels like it could have started out one-sided, it could be the difference of one player just coming in and saying, look, our comms are a little bit disorganized, let's settle, let's play our game, and that could make all the difference. I mean, that I think is how close these two teams really could be in this matchup. So one person just stepping up and taking that leadership role for these youth programs, that could be a big deal here for them. So that's what I'm looking for going into a map number 2, as well as, you know, maybe some shifts on you know, how we're taking these approaches in some of these team fights, especially. I mean, I would say the transitions as well between going for that pre-fight and hitting our engage, you know, especially when we're reacting to a play. You look at that pulse bomb play that affected them pretty detrimentally. Those kinds of things, if you clean that up, I think that makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's little things at the end of the day. And as well, there are big things they can change if they want to, if they feel like things are getting to a bad place. We talked about how dynamic the meta is, but with map changes, with map pick, often comes determination of what you're going to play in the current meta. It's not at a point where you're running one thing on the same map because it's so strong that you need to. If you pick a dive map, you need to pick a dive composition right now. And if they want to go ahead and shift things towards more pokey, shift things towards more brawl, shift things more into that dive territory where maybe Huntington Beach feels more comfortable, that's absolutely something that they have open to them. And the meta, thankfully, allows for, which I think in high school is super important. Because again, it's the players at your school is kind of who you get to choose from, right? So if you happen to have people that are just good at that one particular thing, yeah, being able to lean into that with a second map pick could be huge.
Yeah, and when you talk about making changes, well, I mean, that's one thing that you can do. You can kind of, you know, put that hand deep into the bag and pull something else out, and that could be a different player on your roster. It looks like we are going to have a substitute. We'll get the exact clarification on what's exactly going on there, but it is going to be, I believe, Mogwart's actually making that substitution. But you talk about some of those compositions and some of the, you know, variation that we could see in the play styles, even with a couple of switch ups, and I think that we've already seen some of that at least kind of played with initially. I mean, we saw a brawl composition kind of spearheaded by a Sigma that is, I would say, something that you don't see all that often, but it could maybe key us into the fact that perhaps Brooklyn Technical wants to go ahead and play some of these other play styles. And while they did perform well in that Ramatra brawl, somewhat of a mirror, obviously some delineation there between their opposition, but you know, there could be something else on the table here. And I would say even for Huntington Beach, I mean, if we see them go towards more dive stuff, that could be where they take precedence. There's so many different things that could change map to map, playstyle to playstyle. And also when you're talking about, you know, subbing in different players and bringing in different strengths as well, that could really make all the difference as well. Yeah,
and that's something you talked about. It's going to be a little zoom for Keone, which I'm going to be honest. Well, I mean, you're surprised to see subs when somebody like Keone's getting subbed out, who was doing phenomenal stuff on the Tracer. That pulse bomb again. Yeah, it forced what was, I think, at a really high level, a mistake to sound barrier instead of use the immortality field. But realistically, it's a very understandable sound barrier and one that I think is at most levels relatively acceptable. Like, that's a huge play.
Playmakers got to make plays. Man.
Exactly. Like I can't. Like I have to give all the credit on that one to Keone. And so subbing them out, you expect big things from Lil Zoom. And as we head into Coliseum, I think this is an interesting map because it opens up the door a little bit in terms of compositions. That Sigma that we were talking about on the last map certainly does peek its head out here every once in a while. Yeah. And any type of brawl, generally fair game, but that Sigma is coming to mind if they want to think about it one more time.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at this one, I'm definitely thinking about, you know, what kind of brawl compositions I'm looking for. Even when you're looking at the Sigma compositions, you do still obviously have that kind of poke composition or whatever. But even some of those poke compositions are inherently leaning towards brawl composition when you look at the backlines and everything.
It's so ironic how Overwatch 2 just like blurred the line between dive and poke, or between brawl and poke.
You play Lucio. That's really what it is, and it enables the brawl no matter what you're playing, it feels like. But we are going to be able to get exactly what we were talking about. It is going to be that Ramatra that we saw opened up by Huntington Beach, but Brooklyn Technical, they were toying with that Sigma. Now they're going to go ahead and bring it out yet again. They weren't as, I would say, successful as they would have liked in their opening fight on the last map. Let's see if they can turn it around here with little zoom on it this time around.
And this isn't a particularly brawly Sigma composition and amongst the Overwatch 2 Sigma compositions. Their goal here is not to fight at close range against Huntington Beach. Their goal is to stay far away, charge up those railguns, allow Toxic Void's damage from the Baptiste to really rein in. Genghis Khan on the Torbjorn. I think a sick little pocket pick here is going to keep Andrew kind of at arm's length for the entirety of the game. It also makes it difficult for the Kiriko to flank. This is a really cool and interesting composition from Brooklyn Technical. I'm digging it.
Yeah, I mean, between the Torb and the Lucio able to mark Andrew, it definitely denies him some of that aggression, and you can already see it's paying dividends.
Yeah, I mean, how do you approach that if you're Andrew? Like, what do you do? There's a Torb turn looking at you, a Lucio Torb. Yeah, it's gonna be. There's a good chance Andrew just goes back and swaps, but 79% to a pulse bomb. Maybe they just try to hold on here. Speeding forward are Brooklyn Technical, looking to clean up one or two more, but they're not gonna get them.
So some early advantage here for Brooklyn Technical. Again, a team that I think with this composition last round, I mean, they struggled in the opening fight. This time they get ahead early and already some decent coverage as well. And Andrew once again goes down. I will say, I don't know that they're just going to swap the Tracer. It's a hard thing to go ahead and do, but nonetheless, it is going to be a difficult thing to pull off.
And you can see this disengage we were talking about. They don't want to fight up close, so Brooklyn Technical is back away, will speed away. This also gives them the spawn advantage on that one DPS player who went down, so the early advantage should go to the team in red here, especially with ultimates coming online pretty soon. It's going to be the Gravitic Flux popped first by Lil Zoom, matched by a sound barrier, but it's not put onto Andrew and Love My Mom again. It only catches 3 members of the team. Huntington Beach are going to be put down yet again.
I mean, great disengage.
That was
great answer. Great re-engage as well. Once we saw Atlas's sound barrier come up, Brooklyn Technical were very quick to recognize that Huntington Beach still had a couple of players that were low HP. It was going to be difficult for them to actually regenerate their health. So once they broke that sound barrier bonus health, it was easy for them to get those kills. And now Brooklyn Technical can step up. They have a huge advantage because they have their own sound barrier.
Oh, how did CKC go down? Amidst all of their teammates as well. I thought the Molten Cores just kind of hold them off until they could push this under the bridge to a slightly safer position to have the card in, but no, they've taken space with it. They've moved all the way up onto this bridge. What an aggressive move by Brooklyn Technical, and they've got more ultimates behind that. This is going to be a difficult nut to crack for Huntington Beach.
Yeah, cheap fight. You use one Molten Core and you win the fight, and now you are getting into a very dangerous territory if you're Huntington Beach here, all the way through the bridge underneath the underpass. And now Brooklyn Technical, they still have all of those options moving forward, and CKC is still taking tons of pressure.
Oh, an EV dog down early. A sound barrier engage attempted by End Monster here for Brooklyn Technical to try and capitalize on their early pick. They're not able to create anything with it. Oh, I say so, until Andrew goes down. 2 should be enough to finish this off. Fortunately for Huntington Beach, the spawns are quick. They'll get 1, maybe 2 more chances at this, and Brooklyn Technical are spent. Now it's the blue team's turn to fight on back. Stepping forward, CKC knows that they've got the annihilation. Brooklyn Technical also know that ultimate's up, so they start backing away again. Disengage has been the name of the game for the team in red, and they do it beautifully every single time, forcing overextensions out of EV Dog, out of Andrew. You can see CKC is just desperately trying to get to this team so that it can use the pummel on them, but they can't.
I mean, this has been we've talked about both these teams having dominant performances through the bracket. We also heard the desk talking about sometimes that doesn't even matter. But this feels like Brooklyn Technical is having just as dominant of a performance in this final against another team that was dominant. This is insane, and now CKC needs to step up, needs to go ahead and take some space away, using the Annihilation as well if he can get in there.
Flux doesn't catch anything. Buys a break for Huntington Beach High School. Annihilation re-engage, gets a fight on the board for Huntington Beach.
Oh, they needed that. They needed that. I mean, obviously they needed that. It's 133 meters already with still 5.5 minutes on the clock. It's going to be hard pressed. It's going to be a big uphill battle, I think, ahead of Huntington Beach to be able to reclaim all of that taken space, walked by that robot. but now it's all about equalizing. Get that cart back to neutral. Try to deny that spawn advantage that Brooklyn Technical is obviously going to try to hang on to. They're already in position to do so.
Fortunately for Huntington Beach, the ultimate advantage is pretty neutral at this point in time. Amplification Matrix buys a little bit more time for Brooklyn Technical. Also takes down Atlas moments before the sound barrier came online, so that's going to have to be a disengage for Huntington Beach. A difficult one at that. Now as the time wanes off the clock.
And now you get to make that internal kind of struggle within your own head. Is that great ult tracking or just great fortune that the timing happened the way it was? Either way,
you just catch a rivet with your mouth. That's
either way, Brooklyn Technical is going to take it no matter which one it is, because now they're right back at Huntington's doorstep.
And knock they will. David Newman wants to step forward. Andrew catches the wrong end of a Torb turret yet again. Genghis Khan has broken this match open time and time again. Overclock from the high ground available for David Newman, but they'll be patient. Look at this from Brooklyn Technical, so measured in their approach, not trying to overstep their bounds. Instead, playing that disengage game, playing them the game that's won them fight after fight after fight. They'll step forward. Gravitic Flux plus a railgun equals a whole lot of dead players on the side of Huntington Beach. This card is going all the way through Coliseum.
Yeah, no trouble at all for Brooklyn Technical. They get the job done a second time in a row, and not often do you see a full cap on Coliseum, but the Mogwarts get the job done, and they are one step closer, one step away from a finals win if they can lock it down.
I'm just saying, our predictions are looking very right. You absolutely can't. Do judge books by their covers, do judge teams by their names. All the things you weren't told to do. I think we can firmly say, at least in terms of reading things on first look, probably should.
I mean, to be fair, we do have a little bit more time spent on Overwatch 2 than our desk. Just a little bit. Like a little tiny little bit. So like maybe...
Overwatch team name connoisseurs, really.
Yes, exactly. So we've been able to kind of develop this over time, you know, spending that, you know, over the years that we've casted together, over the years that we've casted just in general this game. We picked up on things, man, a couple of things.
Seen plenty of teams come and go, and you know what? It might be quick for one of these teams to come and go if Huntington Beach cannot figure out a way to beat out Mogwarts for this one potentially final map. We'll find out whether or not they can, though, after this break. Welcome back, y'all. After a quick little break, these teams are locked and loaded and ready to get back into things. Huntington Beach have the world in front of them, and it's all up to them to try and take it. It's going to be some tough changes to be made, though, up against Brooklyn.
Yeah, especially because Brooklyn has made some adjustments of their own throughout this series, and it feels like they've only gotten stronger. And that's crazy to say because one of the adjustments that they made was taking out one of their players that made a fantastic play here on this map to open things up in this series. I mean, it has been a star-studded affair, I think, for Brooklyn Technical across the board, and that's all 6 players that we have seen so far, all of them.
Yeah, they've been phenomenal. And to be honest, I want to shout out one in particular because whether it's communication, because it's always communication with positioning, but realistically, I have to give a lot of credit here to N Monster. The Lucio play has been immaculate for Brooklyn Technical, and it's been very suffocating at that. The disengages have been called perfectly. That's coordination between them and the tank, both of the tanks that have been in and played. And on top of that, I don't think we've seen a sound barrier miss for Brooklyn Technical. Like, they're like, even if you go from like a nuanced perspective, there's very little to nitpick about here. And that's made it so difficult because it's not just like, normally, especially with the like high school level stuff, you expect opportunities to arise from imperfect play because Overwatch is so dynamic, it's hard to play perfectly.
Yeah.
But when you have someone who's putting up such consistent support for their team, such consistent positioning and group togetherness, it's really hard to find those cracks to get yourself back into the game. So it's like, yeah, the BTHS are looking good and they're playing well, but it's that much harder to kind of get over the hill that they've created because of that Lucio play.
Yeah, and Monster has been incredible. And again, like you said, I think the most incredible part of that has been the fact that it has been integrating with 2 different tank players in 2 maps so far. We saw both Lil Zoom Zoom as well. as David Newman, if I'm not mistaken, as well, was the other tank in that first map. So, I mean, that's crazy to see that they don't miss a beat at all when they switch up such a critical fixture of a composition, especially when you're talking about communication. It's main tank a lot of the time kind of deciding a lot of those things on top of the Lucio player if they are being able to dictate tempo, as well as some of the ults, the economy, as well as what their pre-fight plan is going to be. But regardless, it's less about them. It's now more about Huntington Beach and what are they going to be able to do to find a way back into this series. Right now, they are down 2-0. I mean, backs against the wall. And we have yet another sub here. Keone is coming in now instead of Genghis Khan. So Keone comes back in, one of the stars, I would say, of the first map. Now makes a return from map number 3. Potentially could be the last map in this series.
Could be. We can talk all day about what Brooklyn Technical are doing. The sub from Keone, little zoom moving off of tank, now back to a DPS role.
There's some
Super
flexibility
sick to see
here.
that flexibility, yeah. But we got to talk about Huntington Beach. Is what they felt confident on this, what they're rolling out on. It's more of that Ramatra composition.
Yeah.
The big thing for me has got to be connection between CKC and that backline. A lot of the losses
Pivotal.
were when they just had those little disconnects. It's not CKC's fault, but when your team starts either lagging behind or the tank gets too far ahead, that's where we saw that tank get burst down early in those fights, and Huntington Beach kind of give up a couple that they didn't necessarily need to.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing to do, especially when you're talking about some of these brawling compositions, especially ones with a lot of poke-heavy stuff going on. You talk about the Torb that we saw, the Sigma. There's going to be a lot of focus on the CKC, and that becomes very hard to deal with. Now we see a totally different shift here for Brooklyn Technical. They made that one adjustment to the player, and you see a play style massive change here, but still,
Half the play style change, it's still CKC.
Okay. Maybe the strat hasn't changed. The play style's different, but the strat's the same. It's focus, main tank, focus, main tank, focus, main tank.
Yeah, when you see something like an Ashe Genji come out, right? With a dive, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, we're going to look for a little bit of backline damage, going to look to finish people off with dashes, but the second you lock in an Echo, you're looking to make the tank's life very unfun, and they're just doubling down on the CKC train, and you know what? It's working for them right about now that they push the cart up a hill.
Especially with that Ana in play as well against the Ramatra, just denying that healing. Once that shield goes down, that biotic grenade is just going to be free to land as well, something that CKC is going to have to be on the lookout for. But it's David Newman who has to be careful, already taking a ton of pressure off of some of these dives, but navigating them well so far.
Yeah, avoiding most of the damage. You have the Baptiste in a bit of a corner, force out immortality field. I don't think they're able to get much more. A nice little anti-nade does mean that Huntington Beach have to respect it and back off. End Monster caught out with a cheeky little headshot from Love My Mom. I think that puts Brooklyn Technical enough on the back foot that they at least have to take a respawn here.
Yeah, buying time here defensively for Huntington Beach, that is huge for them because they need to be able to start building up this economy. Something that we're going to see here early is this nano boost. How can they stave it off?
Seems like relatively doable for them. A third dive in from the Monkey as it's followed up by a duplicated Ramatra. They finally get in on the backline. It takes a few more ultimates than I think Brooklyn Technical would have liked to spend there, but a point's a point.
Yeah, definitely, and that's exactly what Brooklyn Technical was looking for. As soon as they get that early advantage in the economy, they're going to go ahead and take full advantage of it. They have thrown everything out onto Huntington Beach to get this early momentum, but now it's about holding on to it, and man, they keep looking out for CKC. They keep going.
It's so close every single time. That being said, I think it's a pretty good position for Huntington Beach. I'd be okay with this. 4 minutes on the clock, full ultimate advantage. I think it's like a 4 ult plus that they're on right now. There is a lot of room to play here. If they can make these fights efficient, just like that. 1 ult, 1 kill, 1 elimination, and you're done. Put Brooklyn Technical on the back foot, clean up a few more, take it to the next one. This is what they need to do to take advantage of the fact that Brooklyn Technical spent so big on that last fight to take point A.
I think Huntington Beach is looking a lot better here in this map. I mean, obviously, getting some fight wins under their belt. They have 2 already in this map that they've been able to be successful with, and now also they have a great standing in economy. That is something that we didn't see often from them in the last 2 maps. It certainly looks like a much different Huntington Beach, but man, that early focus from Brooklyn Technical is so difficult to deal with.
Yeah, especially, it might have been a deflected railgun into EV Dog if we're being real. That's a tough way to go. And Huntington Beach, more than happy to try and fight this one back. CKC popping in Annihilation, making sure they can hold that space. It's working well against Brooklyn Technical, who are still without impactful ultimate. And Monster had a rally, but it went down immediately. And it's 2 ultimates to win the fight. Yes, from Huntington Beach, but, you know, 2 for 1, you're still not mad at.
Yeah, and interesting here, too. Brooklyn Tactical making some, I mean, intriguing swaps is what I'll say. I mean, Doomfist coming in, so obviously looking for some disruption, but when you're talking about trying to get up into that high ground, obviously that's a big reason why they're making these changes. These are characters that can actually aggress up to that high ground, but that's one of the issues is that, yeah, I mean, this is one of the issues. If you aren't able to get into position collectively and set up a pre-fight for that engage, it is almost impossible to get up there and take Huntington Beach position, and that's going to be a struggle, I think, going forward until we see some of these ults come back up, and it looks like that's going to be the case here.
I don't think it's enough, though. Normally, if you're staring down the barrel of a 4 ultimate advantage, you have to lose like 3 fights willingly. They've already lost 3 fights willingly, and they're still at an ultimate disadvantage because of that last pick from Andrew, generating so much ultimate charge for the team. Now you're going in, it's going to be a dead even fight here. Huntington Beach want to take the front foot on CKC, dives into the backline, immediately catches an anti-nade, but Andrew picks up on an unsuspecting Toxic Void as the rest of Huntington Beach tries to follow up. It's picked off 1 for 1, but without an Ana. How does Brooklyn Tech want to try to sustain this? They won't. Instead, they back away, trying to bide their time for that respawn.
Great stabilization. Great stabilization there from Brooklyn Technical. They needed it at that moment. Huntington Beach was so healthy. Now they are able to actually pull out the Immortality Field. This is an advantage here for Brooklyn Technical with that Blade and I mean, Keone just... he almost got taken out there. That was a little bit worrisome, I have to admit.
And there's still a lot of danger here with the Amplification Matrix coming out. Slicing at the Lucio, does manage to get it. Now look for that T. So that's the backline gone for Huntington Beach. Brooklyn Technical pick up a fight win. Again! Yo, Andrew! Create something here. Looks for one more, can't find it. Buys a little more time on the card. There will be a re-engage here, and it may be enough considering those picks.
Yeah, I mean, I would say potential spawn advantage here because Lucio is going to be able to boost Huntington Beach back into position. They are very close to having some very critical ults coming up as long as Atlas can get there, but I think they just... They need to get in position, and they do wind up taking it. And look at this position, too. They hold the corner.
Oh, it's so good for Huntington Beach. And now they can just disengage this Kitsune Rush. If they can back out, buy time for that sound barrier. Now it's their turn to re-engage. Sound barrier, Andrew goes down before it pops, but it's their turn to engage. The sound barrier allows them to take down David Newman and thrusts CKC into the back line of Brooklyn Technical, who are sent careening down the hill from which they came.
Oh, I don't know, though, because they weren't able to capitalize and get the kill into Lil Zoom Zoom. CKC still has Annihilation, but look, Huntington Beach is down 3 players, and now even more.
Annihilation! The Ramatsu doesn't pop the Annihilation. Why wouldn't you? It's 250, 300 free extra health. Probably would have bought them the fight, but they don't go for it. Spawn advantage and all. Huntington Beach have now got to hold this one on a point C.
I mean, you look at the fight even earlier where they were so close to getting that kill onto Sojourn, but weren't able to get it. I mean, that lack of that kill or that elimination right there was just, that might have actually spelled the defeat for that point there. And now they move into the final section of the map. Huntington Beach, who has been stalwart on their defense so far. It's just those tiny little things that can make all the difference. And Brooklyn Technical has taken advantage.
Brooklyn Tech have been at their best when they can use a bunch of ultimates. Right now, it's the Nano Blade out early for Keone. Slashing away at the Lucio, booped off, taken down by CKC. One of the strongest ultimate combos in the game has been eliminated at the cost of 0, but Brooklyn Technical are able to follow up with a little bit of Doomfist magic and pick up a fight win. The question is, can Huntington Beach actually stabilize before this crosses the line?
Oh, it's going to be a difficult task for them. 45 seconds on the clock, though. Brooklyn Technical looks like they have more than enough potentially here. I don't know if anybody's going to even touch to get backed off, and just like that, Brooklyn Technical go the distance. But man, it looked like there was going to be a pre-.2 stop there for a minute from Huntington Beach, and unfortunately it just slipped through their grasp.
I want to be honest, I feel like Huntington Beach has played this map better. Like, as far as what that goes, by most regards, it should have been a point B stop, right? Like, the fights that they've lost have just been at more critical junctions. I think it's kind of... The damage for lost fights has been really significant. And that comes partially down to macro planning, but realistically, it's just like, yeah, you get that pick on the Sojourn, and all of a sudden, the entire map is just completely flipped in your favor. It's the tiniest of issues here and there, but they've been in control. I think there's no mistaking that. They've been in control of the map. They've been in control of most of these fights. They've been in control of the ultimate economy, literally the entire map, which is flipping the series on its head from what it was before. This is something Huntington Beach absolutely can do, though they've made it a bit harder for themselves by allowing that take to come all the way through point C.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it before in the past, a team that has been able to look, fairly well on this map. This is an interesting map because I would say traditionally it's not a map that a lot of teams are able to go the distance on, so that does not obviously bode well for Huntington Beach, but it is a map that I think Huntington Beach looks good enough on that I would probably put my chips in their corner to see if they can, make it the distance themselves, and then we go into those overtime pushes to see if, distance becomes a factor at that point, and we'll see what happens then if we get to that stage. But I think, like you mentioned already, Huntington Beach is a team that has looked good throughout this map. It's just been those critical moments where things have kind of slipped through their grasp. We saw them looking certainly much better to start the map here than they have throughout the entire series. Those first two opening maps coming out of this break, they looked much more confident. This looked like much better map situation, and they also, I would say, played much better into that dive-oriented style where they were able to play their corners, play their disengages, and they really did well to make Brooklyn Technical really work for it at a couple of those points. And unfortunately for them, they just weren't able to fully stop them at the moments that they had opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to Andrew especially, who I feel like has really had a turnaround. I mean, obviously you're getting just oppressed by a Torbjorn and a Lucio and a Bap just like staring you down the barrel pretty much the entirety of Coliseum, right? So what are you going to do on Tracer? But man, to come back and throw up a performance like this so far, Andrew has been critical to this team putting up numbers and really making the backline's life difficult for the other side. Now though, as we swap sides of the map, we talked about, oh yeah, you look more comfortable playing into that dive-oriented composition. Decent chance you don't see it on defense. Right, that dive-oriented composition was really, it seemed like, to gain access to those high grounds more easily, to not have to kind of fight up the road, as it were. Now on the other side, we've seen the Sigma, we've seen the Ram out of them. There's a very good chance that they go back now that they've got the position to hold.
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised to see a Sigma. I mean, that's something that they've been obviously toying with throughout the series. We saw them open up map 1. We saw them open up map 2 with it. And, I think at this point, if they're going to play it, this makes a lot of sense, certainly in this stage. It's something that we even saw in the pro scene on this map specifically. It's been a staple for this map to see things like Sigma as well as the Ramatra, which I would expect to see at least one of those two, a little bit less of the dive that we've seen. But we're about to jump back into the map here after a brief little pause from, I would say, the technical side. I don't want to say it was Brooklyn Technical making the technical pause. I didn't see who it was. But either way, we're jumping back in. And it's an opportunity yet again here for Huntington Beach to make their mark, and they have to make a big one here. A bold statement is necessary for a team that is trying to claw their way back into this series.
It is exactly what we were starting to think of from this Brooklyn Technical side. It's back to the Ramatra, a Farah and a Hanzo in tow as well. I got to hand it to Brooklyn Technical.
Are they locking that? Are they locking that?
They are. I
guess they have to be. They have to be.
They're masters of making their composition as annoying as humanly possible. Let me tell you what. What was the last map? Torb, Sojourn, Lucio Bap, like
torture for Andrew. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Really, really tough stuff to play into. And now, yeah, Farah Hanzo is just poke city. David Newman's gonna just sit behind a shield and throw out nano things and oh god. What a nightmare for Huntington Beach. They're going to have to fight all the way through it as well. The name of the game here for Huntington Beach is don't die. If you live, you should be all right. They can't stand on the cart forever. You have the close range potential, and that's exactly what it is. David Newman did not respect Huntington Beach at close range, tried to fight, and you got bit. Brooklyn Technical need to be fighting from range with this composition, and if they don't, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Oh, this is interesting here. David Newman actually making a swap over to the Winston.
This does not feel cohesive with the rest of what's going on.
I mean, they don't have, I think, the burst pressure that they might need to actually make this work the way that they want to, but we'll have to see. They obviously picked this for a reason, and David Newman, I mean, he's already taking a ton of pressure off of that dive, cannot stay in and brawl the way that a Winston would realistically like to. And you look, they are not able to stabilize. They can't.
No. Poke heroes like Pharah and Hanzo inherently want time. You want to buy them time and space, hence why heroes like Sigma, heroes like Orisa have traditionally been good with them because they can sit on corners, they can sit at distance and buy you time. Heroes like Winston, you can kind of hold space with them. Ram, you can do something in between that, but neither of them have been able to actually buy the time that you need for a Pharah and a Hanzo to chip away the health bars of enemy teams.
Further investment into this as well. Toxic Void making a swap over to the Ana, and an Ana pick as well that isn't going to be able to be insulated as much as we've seen from some other compositions employed by Brooklyn Technical. So that means Andrew could be on the lookout for that backline, and Toxic Void could be someone that is certainly prey for that Tracer.
And Brooklyn Technical take their composition that is still kind of in two minds. Into an aggressive position. Primal's great onto Love My Mom, takes down the Implication Matrix. Some nice mechanics there by Brooklyn Technical fight. It's not quite over yet though. A couple of kills to be picked up on the backside and Huntington Beach sent packing.
I will say though, I mean, David Newman is the one to look out for here. In terms of tempo, David Newman is the one setting it, I think, a lot of times, trying to make that frenetic pacing work for Brooklyn Technical so they can have that long, drawn-out brawl. We saw even back on map number 1, but now without the support of the Primal, that you can't get out.
The Ravenous Vortex, disgusting from CKC.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, says I love my mom. Yeah, that was a hard one to watch. If you're Brooklyn Technical, your tank just like jumping back at you only to get dragged down into the pits of Huntington Beach. Oh my
This is payback, Thor. This is
This
you
is
know
karma.
it's payback. This is CKC getting payback, and rightfully so, because they were doing this to CKC earlier in the series, and now it's Huntington Beach's turn. And look at this. They also have some fantastic economy going into this next fight. It's 4v4, and Lil Zoom Zoom opening things up.
Arguably far better ultimates for Huntington Beach, though. Let's be very real with ourselves. Those DPS ultimates early here.
I think they're gifting this fight.
Falling early
I
here.
think they're gifting
I
this
think
fight.
they're gifting it. Yeah, I think they're letting it. And you know what? 3 for none? I'd be happy with that. I'd be very happy with that.
You have plenty of time. Look, Brooklyn Technical got taken down to 39 seconds. So now you're all about playing for time. You know that you have the ability to kind of create this momentum, hold on to this momentum, and just take advantage of your bank that you've accrued. 3 minutes is not bad at all for this stage in the map. And now you have 4 ultimates to 2, a great position to play from. Now they can go forward and try to take this fight here.
Sound barrier annihilation. A bit of a spend going forward. Lil Zoom Zoom's able to find Love My Mom. This is not over yet. The health bars are still low enough for Brooklyn Technical. This can be won. It's going to come down to the DPS to really do it, though. Zoom Zoom's causing a ton of problems. Andrew picks up a 1v1, looking for the kill. Isn't able to get it. Zoom Zoom cleans up the entire backline of Huntington Beach, and that is the entire 4 ultimate advantage they had garnered for themselves down the drain at the hands of 1 Tracer player.
That's a big equalizer here for Brooklyn Technical. Huntington Beach was in the driver's seat, and now it feels like they've been ejected from the car entirely. What was once an over 3-minute bank for them to play with, now they're down to 2 minutes, and they have nothing in their back pocket, no ultimates to lean on. And look at this, Brooklyn Technical, those ultimates they used before, they're back up now.
Nano boost into the backline. I mean, it's a dream situation for Brooklyn Technical. Nano boost into nothing should be just a clear-cut win.
That it is. Clear cut indeed. And this time, I mean, we look at it after every one of these team fights and you can see it's just draining. Huntington Beach's morale probably also draining along with it. They need a miracle, and it's probably going to have to come in, I mean, what might have to be an individual play, an individual pick, something like we saw from Lil Zoom Zoom 2 fights ago from someone out of Huntington Beach to be able to get them back into this one. They need to be able to find a fight win in the next 80 seconds.
You're looking at Andrew with the pulse bomb. There's a very juicy on in the backline of Brooklyn Technical. If they can just reach. It's so far though. Playing Frogger across the flying arrows of Hanzo is difficult as well. David Newman instead caught overextended. The Primal only brings your health bar up. It does not make you invincible. It's a fight win. Potentially a point here for Huntington Beach, I believe, because that Ana's going to take quite a while to get back. They can try to re-engage, but I'm not sure there's much in it.
Yeah, especially when those staggers could come out as well and just offer even more opportunity for Huntington Beach. And it looks like they are going to go ahead and just kind of play with the food a little bit, but it's Huntington Beach that are going to have the last lap. 5 ultimates coming into this next fight. They still have a decent time bank to work with as long as they're able to kind of push this fight, this last fight win, into a solid fight that's cheap and economical. I think that's going to be the key for Huntington Beach. They don't want to overspend because then they could get trapped at the back end of the map.
The big thing I'm watching, they can't spend Sound Barrier and Annihilation at the same time. They've been doing it time and time again. If Atlas can hold it, oh no, little zoom to and finds an early one on Andrew. That's not critical damage being done yet. They can just wait for that spawn. It's only 15 seconds off the clock.
Yeah, it's Andrew going down as well. So Tracer is going to be the fastest person to come back to the fight, maybe barring Tracer. But there's a little bit of a poke engage here from Brooklyn Technical. I think, again, just trying to buy some of that space back, force Huntington Beach back, make them push back through. Oh, man, EV Dog almost just got one shot.
It was close. It all comes up neutral. Sound Barrier engage as they step forward, using the Annihilation. All of the sustain's been popped. Dragging into the backline, shuts off the disengage from Huntington Beach. Brooklyn Tech are coming up big, but there's only 2 up for either side. David Newman, Lil Zoom Zoom up against CKC and Andrew. Tank and Tracer up against Tank and Tracer. Ramatra on the back foot. No way of gaining the same shields that the Doomfist does. Has to run it all the way back to spawn. Huntington Beach take another loss. They cannot afford one more.
A little bit of an investment here. Love My Mom going over to the Moira. They are fully going for the brawl, trying to see if they can just play the sustain game here with this swap up, keep their backline healthy, get it away from Lil Zoom Zoom, I think is probably the priority.
I think the game plan is to shift this, run it down. Find Toxic Void is now the name of the game. You can see how aggressively they're trying to take space here, but the Doomfist and Lil Zoom Zoom are holding them at arm's length. You can imagine how far away that Ana is, how impossible they are to reach. Brooklyn Technical look invincible in this position.
Not too much time left here on the clock, and this stagger might seal it if it comes out as well. A timely elimination onto Atlas, now 4 seconds on the clock. It is desperation here for Huntington Beach.
Desperately, they'll try to short cards. They get 2 picks out of this. Huntington Beach aren't out of it yet. But as they fall away from the cart, Brooklyn Technical prove their superiority. A 3-0 decisive victory for the Overwatch National Champions.
Yeah, obviously a team that has just been decisive through and through this playoff bracket. Does just that again here in the finals. They make it look so clean, so effortless at times, but obviously still a great performance, especially on that last map, man. What could be said about Huntington Beach on that last map and what potential they showed if we would have seen that through, for them through the entire series, how different this could have turned out. But nonetheless, Brooklyn Technical, they are the champions today, and man, did they play well.
And they deserve it. It was consistency across multiple compositions, players playing different positions on top of that, which was pretty crazy to see. I think we saw clutch plays from virtually every position. We talked about the Lucio play, we talked about the Tracer play, we talked about the Pulse Bomb, we talked about the Tank play that was coming out. It was superiority across the board. Huntington Beach, credit where it's due. We talked about being able to turn a game around at halftime, and they absolutely did that. I feel like even at the end of this game, even
for a second.
even if Brooklyn Technical won this map, I felt like Huntington Beach still showed us what was like, quote unquote, technically the better map. But when they lost, they just lost so big, right? You think to the fight where they were able to get taken down by a Tracer up against 4 ultimates, right? And mistakes that are that large. Yeah, they played consistently. They dominated the ult economy pretty much the entire game. But the fact that you let one fight go like that completely tanks your ultimate economy is just not stuff that you can do. And so, yeah, they turned it around, but just 1 or 2 of those big mistakes is enough to crumble in the face of a team that's as good as Mogwarts was.
Yeah, and I mean, we got to say, I mean, we kind of hit the nail on the head with our predictions. I think we know a thing or two, don't we?
Yeah, we know how to read a team. It's just, I don't know, it's a gain skill. It's like what do they do when they find the water with the dowsing rods? Yeah.
You lost me. You've lost it. You've gone and lost me, man. Yeah, definitely. I think throughout this has been I think an eye-opening experience for me. I mean, this is two teams that have played out of their minds, two teams that I have obviously not seen prior to this, but I'm looking forward to seeing quite a bit more from them because they played insanely well, especially Brooklyn Technical. Obviously, are champions. That makes a lot of sense, but man, that team played so cohesively across, multiple swaps. We saw 3 maps and 3 lineups. They changed up their lineup between every single map, and it was never the same between any of them. We saw multiple different people playing tank, but throughout all of it, they still looked dominant, and that's the best part about it. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and say thank you guys for watching. We're going to go ahead and throw it back over to hosts. And I will say, before we dip out, before we head over to them, we were right, you were wrong. You're going to have to deal with it. Let's hear what you guys have to say. Over to our hosts now.
You know what? Joke's on them. I'm always wrong.
Well, and we knew what we were doing.
That's true.
We knew that we were cursing them.
And credit to them. Very smart guys. They called those
They
games
just,
extremely
it's
well.
The dowsing rods. I knew what he was talking about.
Can you explain that to me?
It's just this weird little tool that you hold, and they when they cross.
Okay, yeah. Anyways, congratulations to Brooklyn Technical Institute for taking the win in 2024 Play versus Cup Finals for Overwatch 2. What a dominant performance from them, despite Huntington Beach doing everything they could to push at on the last map. That final stand at the end, that Tracer was going insane getting those kills at the end. So absolutely insane stuff from them, and that's it for Overwatch, James.
Yeah, I mean, that's really it for us on the mainstream